The other thing that I wanted to comment on is see how we are posing. I'm posing my eyes. I'm working a lot on working with the size of the pupils, these ones here, and the iris, doop, bringing them very thin and very tall, in order to create a shape that if I bring this out, you're going to see that is quite, right, quite elongate, right? And the reason why is because when we put this together, it looks pretty nice. It looks also pretty, very 2D. The trick of this is that you have to make sure that the line, as you can see, this is the line of your, this is the line of the eyelid, right, from the side. So the trick to make that work is to make sure that the line, this line here of the, let me show you even more clear, the line of the eyelid and the line of the pupil, not the iris, the pupil, more or less matches together. So basically what we do, we bring this together. So it's like this line is the same line both for iris and, sorry, both for pupil and both for the corner of or eyelashes or the eyelids. So that's something that I try to do as much as possible. I'm gonna keep working a little bit on the shapes, the lines, again trying to create like a lot of cleanliness and nice results. This takes time. Get cleanliness and nice and cool and 2D poses. Even though they look simple, they take time. So let's do that. So I'm gonna start working on this pose, but one of the classic reels that I do a lot, and I hope that at this time is clear. If not, I'll mention it again because it's something that lots of young animators are very afraid to. They don't know how to work with that, they get lost a little bit in a transition of thinking about how am I gonna go from one pose to the other. Okay, well, the first thing that I say is not to worry too much about it yet. The most important thing, as you can see, I don't even worry about it. Basically what I've been doing is just drawing those or having those ideas of the poses that I want for golden poses. And then I trust that at some point those transitions will show up when I focus on working on the transitions. So first thing that I say is always stick to the process. Don't hold your horses, don't worry too much. So in order to start building this pose, I come from this one, right? When he's like looking away, this one here. So how am I gonna start working in my next pose? Well, which is this pose here. So it's, again, what I'm gonna be doing very simply, straightforward, is resetting. Okay, so don't be afraid to reset. Overall, when you go from one pose that is already so, let's say, so worked, that has so many controls already touched, and only working for this camera, because if you look at from here, you can see that it's quite deformed in 3D, right? So the best way to do that is by resetting. So let's do that. So here it is. I basically just reset all my controls, but not this one, right? Just simply keeping it in the same time. So what I'm gonna do is just simply go and do this pose based on or starting from scratch, from zero, okay? Lots of animators, they like to continue reusing whatever they have, but in cartoon animation, remember that you can do changes from one frame to the other. There's a lot of frame by frame work overall in transitions. So that being said, in each new pose that you have to do, you can start from scratch, right? So let's continue and go for this particular pose. So I'm working in this pose, and for working with mouse, basically, what I give most important is to the mouth region. That's for me most essential. I think it's always very important to understand that the jaw has a big weight when it comes to doing lip sync or just doing like a lot of expressivity. But most of the weight overall in this kind of style was graphic, visually striking. the one that creates the most important weight is everything that we create in the mouth shape. So I also take like a lot of time to, you know, try to make the mouth looks 2D enough. So for example, things that I don't want to do or what I'm going to try to avoid. For example, in this case, you can see that I created like I do like in that drawing like a very clear flat line here with a curve on top, meaning that here we have a very clear angle, or let's say corner. I'm gonna see if I can get that happening. Also, what I want to get is very clearly this kind of 2D feeling on the upper mouth, and all very simple lines like that. Bim, bam. I don't want nothing too complicated. So this takes time, right? Because we have to clean up lots of things. We have to make sure that everything is nice and clean and not with a lot of noises. So I'm gonna be doing that and see if we can get that shape more or less. Hiding the tongue, hiding the lower, hiding the lower teeth is a very normal practice too. Depends on what's your workflow or your preference. You may choose in between scaling it down and hide it somewhere, or just simply hide it somewhere. But sometimes I just rather simply do both. So this is more or less the mouth that I got. Very simple. I could clean up a little bit even more, try to avoid that. I mean, it has like a very subtle curve, which it's okay. I think it's nice as well. We could do that, but it's basically the essence of the mouth that we draw is there, right? With a very nice, strong 2D feeling. So I'm gonna do a quick finishings here and there and see how it looks at the end. Okay, so very fast, something else that I like to comment on is about knowing your character good enough in order to know what is the appeal of your character, right? I know that my character, Toy, has a lot of appeal when we bring the cheeks out like that. So I'm gonna try to do that, but again, this is something that happens because I know that the character gets like a lot of appeal, even though that the pose like that is not bad. We could leave it like that, but we're probably missing the opportunity to get something even more interesting and cool from that. So what I'm gonna do is, well, first things that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hide that ear that is in the back. Sometimes we have to do that, hiding ears, in order to push a little bit the 2D feeling. For that, I'm gonna be doing that. See how it feels? Maybe we need a little bit of it, but I don't want to worry too much about the ear. I know that it may be very nice if we don't have it, maybe. So maybe what I do, I bring my hand whole face a little bit towards the side. We'll see. But anyways, I wanted to comment on that aspect of knowing your character good enough. So sometimes you can take creative decisions in what you know of how your character works better in different ways. So I'm going to be working a little bit with the squash and stretch, some controls here and there, trying to find that a little bit of that curve of the cheek, which can be very nice. Okay, so basically this is what I got at this point, more or less. No timing. So it's just the main, as I was saying, the main golden poses. I think they're working pretty nice. This was actually quite fun to do, the latest pose. Simple but with a strong 2D feeling, and I always enjoy doing that. So probably the next step is going to be to start working a little bit more with the in-betweens, breakdowns that we're going to have. How is it going to, a little bit, maybe start to define a little bit of how is the character going from this pose to the front. And then very simple define a little bit of this transition from one side to the other, maybe with some eye darts. And then the take with a little bit of anticipation, a squash and a stretch. So the idea is that we end up having a good and a readable first blocking pass to read what are we doing. So this is just golden poses, but same thing as we did before. Everything basically is going to based on these poses that we already have. It's going to be a process of taking a little bit from this, taking a little bit from that, using a lot of the tweener to get into this new pass of key poses where we get the first blocking pass. So let's start to work on those simple